You've entered Bookstorm with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Welcome back to Bookstorm Podcast, everyone. You know, one of our very favorite podcasts are when we get one of our favorite authors to come back onto Bookstorm again. We have one here with us today. Welcome to Jill Shalvis. We adore her books. Super excited to dive down deep with you today, Jill.
Thank you for having me again.
And I want to remind our listeners a little bit about you because it's so fun to hear about their favorite author. Jill is a multiple New York Times and USA Today best-selling author. She lives in a small town in the Sierras, and we were just talking about the fact that it was snowing there a week ago. It's June, which is kind of fun to hear about these different places in the country. Her stories are full of quirky characters, maybe from the Sierras, but her bio adds, any resemblance to the quirky characters in my books is mostly coincidental. And we can all relate to that because no matter where you live, life is filled with wonderful, quirky characters, and we are one of them, right?
All of us are in some way.
Well, we're here to talk about her newest Sunrise Cove novel, which is The Summer Escape. Kristen and I loved it. And so did the Bookstorm friend, Susan Wiggs. We love Susan. She's been on our show. She says it best. Sisterhood takes center stage in this utterly absorbing novel. Jill Shalvis balances her trademark sunny optimism and humor and unforgettable real-life drama. It's a book to savor and enjoy. Yes, Susan, we couldn't agree more. So happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. And that was a sweet quote. I hadn't seen it. So thank you for sharing. Susan's great.
Well, Jill, we're here and we're talking about this fantastic book, The Summer Escape. I describe it as a breath of fresh air. It was just enjoyable from start to finish. And I like to give our listeners just a little bit of the facts, what's going on in the background. And I won't give away any spoilers, I promise, because we do have a great mystery in this one. Now, in your story, Anna Moore is a detective in Lake Tahoe, and she's very good at what she does, but she's a little unbalanced when somebody comes into her office, Owen Harris. He is sexy, he is smart, he's an adventurous, he loves being outdoors. But he also thinks that Anna's father may have stolen a $1 million necklace that once belonged to his aunt, and he's pretty determined on figuring this out. Now, at some point, they do somewhat join forces, and it was because of the pushing of Anna's sister, Wendy. I love Wendy in this story. She's on bed rest, she's about to have triplets, and she is, I think, needing something to do. So she's in her sister's ear, literally and figuratively, because there's a little, speaker in her ear helping her sister along. And as they are navigating this mystery, we have Wendy along for the ride. This book has the chemistry, it has fun, it has adventure, and we just adored it.
Thank you so much. I mean, that's what came to me first, actually, when I was trying to plot this book, was the sister in the heroine's ear, literally, as she's going along, trying not to fall in love, trying not to die. Someone's after them. There's this mystery, and it's a scavenger hunt, basically. And I just had this image of this heroine with her sister in her ear, and they're like a pack of kittens. They can't stand to be together, but they can't stand to be apart. And so to have your sister in your ear the whole time you're trying to work and fall in love, it was a way for me to bring humor to some tense situations.
Yes, and I wish we all had a Wendy in our ear who had that kind of wit and fun. So I enjoyed that thoroughly.
It was hysterical. And at one point, the sister, Wendy, was she was acting as if she was watching a rom-com, and she says, "Hold on, I got to go get some popcorn." I laughed right I laughed right out loud at that. Okay, so I'm going to give a teaser for our listeners. Another absolutely delightful romance slash mystery slash steamy novel by Joel Shalvitz. Someone says to the character Anna, "Face it, you're afraid to be loved." Owen confesses that someone said to him, "You can't be reached. You're an island." Okay, we can all relate to this, either in our own lives or people that we know. Why is love so complicated? How and why did you write some hurtful pasts into both Anna and Owen's life? Because we can all relate to them. And I just had to ask, do we all have a little bag of broken hearts, relationships, regrets, unrealistic notions of love, maybe that we try to put into this equation?
I mean, I think, yes, we do. I mean, if you're living life right, you're out there taking risks, and that can come back and bite you in the butt, especially in love. So if you're out there living like Anna has been, and how Owen has been, who's an adventurer, self-confessed adventurer, they both have been burned. But also, as from the writing standpoint, as an author, you're writing contemporary, and you don't have, I think we've talked about this before, you don't have a ghost, or you don't have guns, you don't have an apocalypse bearing down on you. The conflict becomes more difficult because it's internal. And so, it's almost a cheat to give them a rough background, something they have to overcome before they can fall in love.
I love this because I do have some single friends who are in the dating world on these dating apps. And I look at them and they are afraid to fall in love. Or maybe people do put themselves as an island. It was interesting to watch these two characters sort of realize how they were sabotaging their own love life and how to fix it.
Well, it's a
Tough one.
protection measure. If you've been hurt before, which they both have, you're gonna, first of all, every time you get hurt, a little piece of your heart gets chipped off, right? So you have all these pieces lying around near your stomach, probably somewhere closer to your feet, maybe even. And so when you start to allow yourself to feel again, you have to glue all that back together, and that's not easy. And then you add in these two literally on the run, trying to figure these external conflicts out. It kind of happens when they're not even looking. I think that's almost how love has to happen, to be honest.
I like that theory.
Absolutely. All right. Owen very gently makes some observations to Anna. And I want to read something that he says because I thought this was great. He says to her, "You like your control and living by a set of rules because of the way your dad lived his life. It makes you feel safe. But you're not responsible for what he did. And that's not the only thing you are, the daughter of a man who walked a line you wouldn't have." How important is it to separate our identity from that of our parents? And do you think that's kind of a natural process that we go through in our 20s?
I really do. I mean, if you were raised by any kind of family, a broken family, a put together family, a mom and a dad, or two dads, or two moms, or grandparents, or by friends, however you were raised, that sticks with you for sure through your 20s. I mean, you start to lose some of it as you get older. You start to realize that you can be who you want to be now, but that takes time. That takes a lot of time. And so usually my characters are still kind of dealing with their past in some way.
Yeah. And I think too, a lot of parents don't realize that that's a necessary part of what, young people in their 20s do. And they take it personally.
Yes,
My son is leaving me. I'm, insecure about this relationship, but we have to recognize that that's normal.
yes. And in Anna's case specifically, she doesn't believe what everyone else believes about her dad because she saw a different guy who raised her and she loved him very much. So in her case, she's also dealing with the pain of, what if he wasn't who I thought he was? What does that make me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I like that theme going through there too. And I have to say, there's a little bit of wisdom in this book. Anna says this: there were moments in life that were tipping points, fixed moments when you realized that things would happen that would fundamentally change you. And maybe there'd be no going back, but that was okay. I loved this idea. Can you expand upon the absolute importance of taking some risks in life? Of course, that's what makes a great novel. So you've got that woven in there. But even in the real world,
Well, in the case of the book, Anna is risk adverse, actually, but she's with this man in the situation of where they have to take quite a few risks to get to the bottom of this mystery. Like, what happened? Is it his aunt or is it her father? And they're both kind of dealing with that. And to get the answers to that, she's finding herself taking these risks that she never would have imagined she would take, and it changes her life. So that is easier for her to see in hindsight, because while she's going through it, I don't think she's happy about the risk she's taking at all.
I
And
actually
Owen, on the
liked
other hand,
I liked
Owen,
that about her.
yes, I love that about her too. And that's what made the conflict so delicious, I think, between them, because his first instinct is jump off the cliff. I'll figure it out when I land.
Yeah.
And that's foreign to her. But his way worked too. And I think they learned how to appreciate each other.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think of tipping points like that butterfly effect, like the choice to go to a certain college changes the trajectory of your life forever. The choice to live in a certain neighborhood, a job you might take. But I like how you showed us it can be smaller decisions, who to open your heart to, who to befriend, who to date. And it made the reader think back on our own tipping points in life.
Yeah, I think that it made Anna think too. Every decision she made to protect her father's memory. And then she gets halfway through it and she's like, am I protecting something that doesn't exist? You have an existential crisis when you get there to that. And I thought it was interesting to see how she handled it.
All right. I already mentioned I love Wendy's character. I want to talk about her for a second. She was coming to terms with a lot of changes in her life, expecting triplets, being on bed rest, maybe not returning to work thereafter. But she also felt the weight of being an older sister, especially when there was an absence of a parent for some years. And I wanted to ask you about that because that's a very big responsibility. And I was wondering why you explored that sibling dynamic, because that's a tough one when an older sibling takes on the role of a parent.
Yeah, and I think that complicated their relationship because Wendy was bossy and controlling in the funniest and most loving of manners. And so Anna feels a little bit like she was her mom and her sister. And so that was part of where I was able to get some of the humor from, pulling on that relationship, which I pulled from my girls. I raised 4 teenage girls at the same time, and I don't recommend that, but it did teach me a lot about women's relationships, and it's fascinating. I didn't have a sister, I always wanted a sister. So I was always fascinated by the relationships. And my oldest daughter was always that bossy, controlling mom slash older sister. And I loved everything about it. So it was fun for me to put it into a book.
That's awesome. Chris and I were talking about that very issue before we jumped on here. Well, Jill, we loved this story. It made me laugh out loud many, many, many times. And like I said, I feel like it's a breath of fresh air that we all need right now. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what's on your radar, what's coming next. And I know it's kind of something you don't have to talk about too detailed, but we'd love to know.
It's always hard to talk about what's coming next. Because, well, first of all, I'm writing one book that's 2 books ahead. And then now we're talking about this book, which I can barely remember writing. And then to talk about the book in between that, it's called Better Than Friends. And it comes out in January. And it's very much in the same vein of this book. Funny, sexy, and a little bit of a mystery.
Oh, excellent. That is a great title, by the way. I love that.
I want to just say to our listeners, this is what I love about these books. So it's like take like a little Hallmarky, but amp it up a little sexy, a little steamy, and you are going to love it.
And a lot more laughs. Well, I know our listeners are going to want to connect with you, and you can be found at jillshelvis.com. You have a wonderful website. You are on BookBub, Goodreads, Twitter, Facebook, correct?
Yeah, Instagram.
And
Yeah.
Instagram,
Yeah. You will
wonderful.
see the latest pictures of snow and my ridiculous dog and sometimes some book news. Then find me on Instagram or Facebook.
Well, we
Love
know
it.
that our listeners will. We absolutely loved this one. We wish you well with your next, and we hope to see you again very soon.
You will. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, Jill. So
Thanks
good
for
to see
having
you
me.
again.
You too. Bye-bye.
Yep. I mean, I couldn't help but just add this little sweet, sexy novel and lots of laughs. You're right. It's super fun. I love Jill's books. You pick it up, you think a lighthearted summer read, and it gives you more than what you would ask for, more than what you would expect. Let's talk about the sisterhood thing a little bit because it's so interesting. I always wished I had a sister, and I don't, but I do have a lot of good friends who are sisters to me, and they know who they are. I treasure that friendship. But this is an interesting prospect because I've got to say, the other night I was at dinner with a huge group of women, and we were talking about sisters, and at least four said they don't get along with their sister at all. So the wishing for a sister does not necessarily guarantee that you're going to be best friends. This is tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's part of the whole point of sisters, right? There's 1 minute you're not getting along, and 10 seconds later you love each other. We see that on the Kardashians all the time. They've always got some conflict going, but in the end, they generally come together. And I think that's part of the joy of having a sister is that there's somebody who ultimately, probably has your back. Now, not in every case. There's many times, like you said, there's people who don't necessarily get along at all. But there is somebody who may be in your corner growing up, and I think that's part of the fun of it.
That's a beautiful thing. What
Mhm.
about when the sisters are big age difference, like in this story where one sort of has to raise the other one? Does that make it not a sister relationship anymore? Maybe more parent?
Yeah, I think that's tricky, especially when there's a parent missing. And, I have a younger sister. She's 9 years younger than I am, and she worked as a nanny for me for a while. But she was still at that age where, you know, we've been through that age. We've made tons of mistakes or we made decisions that we wish we wouldn't have. And so to share that information sounds like parenting and mothering. And I think it's really tricky. So navigating that, I'm not sure anybody can do that really well. But
It's a
you know,
fun topic, though, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It really
I've got
is.
to say this to all the people out there in the dating world. There was a quote in this book: the danger of believing things like this: guys like you aren't into girls like me. It's self sabotage. Why do we do this? This is women at any age. Why do we self deprecate and think that we don't deserve a certain type of person? Or for any of you guys listening, do you ever go around and say, well, she would never go out with me? Oh, girls like that never are into me.
Yeah,
This is a horrible thing.
it is. I think you're believing lies about yourself. And yeah, I think that's a really good thing to explore through novels because you can see it in other people before you necessarily see it in yourself, which again is why we read fiction.
Or
So,
how about we change it to this, ladies? Guys like you would be lucky to get a girl like me. Oh, I like
yeah,
that better.
that might be a different issue. I don't know.
That could be a that could be a problem all its own. Okay, one more thing I have to say. When you screw up in life in a big way, not a little way, do you have to live with it forever? Can you overcome it? Can you bypass it? Can you go on? Can people see you in a new and different way? Or are you stuck with your mistakes forever?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially as we see a number of celebrities who have had really bad things from their past come to light. We saw Diddy this week and incredible, footage of what he did to his then girlfriend. So we all make mistakes. I guess what the issue is how do you handle them? Do you own up to them? Do you take responsibility? And I don't know. That's a tough one.
It's a tough one. And I
It is.
like that old phrase, actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
We can come back and say, I've changed. I'm not going to do that anymore or say that anymore. But then
Yeah.
let's watch and see what you actually do. Could
Yeah.
that be true?
That's why time is so important in getting to know somebody, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. Loved it.
Well, Chris, let me tell our listeners who we have coming up because we have some fantastic stories coming up. Emiko Jean, The Return of Ellie Black, Jamie Brenner, A Novel Summer, Kate White, The Last Time She Saw Him, Lisa Bars, The Goddess of Warsaw, Lisa Wingate, Shelterwood, Brian Andrews and Jeffrey Wilson writing as Tom Clancy for the franchise, Act of Defiance. We have Amanda Peters with The Berry Pickers. We have Jeffrey Deaver and Isabella Maldonado, Fatal Intrusion. And we have Preston and Child, Angel of Vengeance. Now, listeners, we want to tell you how to connect with us. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. We have our beautiful website, bookstormpodcast.com. We are also on YouTube where all of our videos are. We've got a whole store of them. They are fun and incredible books that we've talked about over the years. Until next time, listeners, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep into life-changing fiction.